first thing that I did. Let's talk about a cockpit. What's your dashboard? As you get into it in terms of your vehicle, you see those 5 levers that are actually going to make a decision, right? So as we sit down, the very first step that I would recommend and encourage everyone is sit down with leadership, pretend there's a dashboard in front of you. What do you need to see? And then the second question out of that is, what's the workflow? How do you make the decisions? How do you get that information and data? And Nathan, you're going to see 15 different ways and say, okay, now let's kind of leverage that. How do we get a digital workflow in place so that we can, here's a lean term, poke a yoke and dummy proof. What is that process of getting that information to the dashboard? So you keep the end in mind. We create a dashboard and we're able to kind of streamline that operations as opposed to people writing things on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard, et cetera, within a job site. So all these different areas.
I love that.
All right, we got to do this. It's not a 3-letter acronym, but I have not heard poke-a-yoke. What is that one?
Poke-a-yoke, yeah.
It's airproofing. So it's the ability. So as that when you put on your seatbelt and it chimes, that is a form of a poke-a-yoke, right? It is reminding you that you got to do something. A required field in a Quickbase form, is a form of poke-a-yoke. If you are helping to force the flow of data where it needs to get to, you're making it airproof.
Man, that is such a great analogy on the car one, because everybody in our business needs to, they're always like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, I've got dashboards and I don't know what I want. This is awesome. It's like, and I could see that breaking down to like, okay, talking to the project team. You're in the project team car. What controls do you need?
Right. So, and how you identify, another term for you. So the way you identify the poke-a-yoke requirements is through a Gemba walk, right, Bob?
I love it. We're getting into it.
You probably know more than me. Like, what? Just define what a Gemba walk is. I just know the concept.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. What a Gemba walk is not. A Gemba walk is not a leader who just says, you know what, I'm going to show up at a job site and just walk around just to kind of put my face on the job site. Okay. That's not solving anything. A Gemba walk is actually getting in front of the person who's actually legitimately doing the job and taking your time to walk the footsteps to see what they're actually doing all the way through. Too many times I was on a Gemba walk in manufacturing where you show up and say, okay, what do you do? And the person verbalizes it. How about we go do a Gemba walk and you don't say a word and you say, go through your daily job. I want to see this. All right. But that's hard. We're human because we're actually having someone watch us, and I get that. But if we do it correctly, then we're going to see actually what the process is and where it's broken.
That is awesome, because it's the old managed by walking around that people got exactly wrong. Right? I remember back, and Nathan, you might remember this, like when I was a guest on this show, they said, how did you break this down? And I said, well, I got out of my office. I don't sit in my office. I go and I talk to the people. I sit with the people. But what James jumped on managed by walking around, and we had this, discussion. And then I realized later that people weren't really, the leader would just go walk around.
Yeah.
That's not good, because, that's like the teacher walking by. All the kids act normal.
Well, it's the lion prowling, right? Yeah, there's some great analogies around, like the office place and even the open office workplace. And like, look at how desks are set up where like the leadership is on the outside looking in at the people, where nobody's looking at their back, but they get to look at your back. So someone's always over your shoulder, and that concept, is very different than, no, I want to observe and learn from you, which is much more empathetic, right?
Right.
Yeah, and takes time, takes a relationship. Like you said, Bob, it's going out there, talking, walking a mile in the shoes, realizing they're going to be nervous in the beginning, but over time, you're going to create this rapport, but also an understanding across the business, right? When the boss is walking around, and if the first thing you do is like, hey, you're doing these 9 things wrong. Well, everybody's going to act like the lion prowler.
And they're not going to want
future
on the next job either.
Yeah. And in the future, if it's just like you're walking around, you're talking, you're creating, and you're going, hey, every time I go down there, you seem to be struggling with this. Like, can we walk through it? All of a sudden now, and that's what, that's where I came from, was I didn't know anything about construction when I started.
Yeah.
So it was all like, for me too, the other one was, you want to find out how a process is working, flip the script and have them teach it to you.
That's right.
Hey, teach me what you're doing, because as a business grows, we don't know everything. And you know what? As a leader, you might have done that job at some point.
That's right.
But if you ask and have them teach it to you, all of a sudden you're going to see, hey, maybe this has evolved into something I didn't think it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the next piece of this that I see is when we have these discussions, we start doing the real Gemba walks. It begins to showcase the real workflows that this organization has created. And here's the kicker of it. That is the value add that company XYZ brings to the marketplace. And they want to own that. There is a pride, and there should be a pride, right? You have built your business up. You have developed these workflows that you feel are pretty good. Yes, they might have paper, they might have all this stuff, but this is your stuff. And so if we just go buy a software off the shelf and then force that change, you're losing your identity of who you are as a company. And there's a lot to be said with how do we actually create that workflow and allow these organizations to continue to thrive of who they are and not lose that identity.
Well, and let's not miss our perfect segue here, because the Gemba walks is where we identified the gray work, right? Like all these things, because they may not even know that what they're doing is a wasteful activity because it's just what they've always done, right? You don't know what you don't know, and it goes both ways, right? And so I think, yeah, there's so much to observing that. I'm sure that's where a lot of the observance of that came out of.
And I'm sorry, but the idea just came to me. When I was in manufacturing doing a Gemba walk, I remember walking with a gentleman, and he would walk 5 feet over there, and then he would walk 10 feet, and then he walked 100 feet over there. And he just never thought to him like, oh, okay, this is wasteful. Like, I just literally walked the entire manufacturing floor. He enjoyed it. He got to talk to some people on the way and stuff like that. Never thought about it. And it was like, this is wasteful. We got to figure out a better way to do this and move forward with it. But it's just, when you have your blinders on, you're doing that one way, you don't see it.